Well, good morning or good afternoon to you from wherever you may be joining us from here today. We are Thursday, August 7th, and thank you for joining us for today's Spire webinar, Optimizing Workflows in Spire and Document Management with our friends at Infotrac. My name is Katie Griffin. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Spire, and I'm joined by my good friend Sheldon Waters, President at Infotrac. How are you today, Sheldon?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, good. It's always a pleasure to have you online. Thank you so much. So just before we get started, I'm going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. If this is your first time here, welcome. If it's not your first time sitting in on one of these webinars, I'm going to ask you to raise your virtual hand. In your GoToWebinar panel, you'll see a virtual hand, and that'll just confirm that you can hear me and you can see my screen. My good friend David, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Ian, I appreciate your help. Thank you so much. Everyone, Vicky, you too. I'm going to lower your virtual hands. Thank you. So this is episode 6 of 10 of a podcast style webinar. What is a podcast style webinar? Well, it's a webinar where we also have conversation, and that's where the podcast style part comes in. Every time we have a guest, a different Spire integration partner who joins us on each episode. And we do have a wide variety in the audience of people who are joining us here today. You could be exploring Spire, not yet using Spire. Perhaps you're on your software procurement journey. Perhaps you're a new Spire customer and you're just getting your feet wet in the Spire world. Welcome. Or perhaps, like some of my friends in the audience that I recognize, you are a seasoned Spire user and you probably know more than I do, actually, in some cases. Either way, this is an opportunity for you to think outside of the box, kind of step away from your day to day for an hour and sit with us while we share some best practices, some tips with you. Of course, the integration that we're going to be sharing with you here today. And I always encourage you to contact your Spire partner directly if you do have any questions about what we'll be showing you here today. All right, let's get this show on the road. So, workflow. It's such a buzzword. Like everyone and their aunt is talking about workflow, and it's been around for quite some time and thrown around for quite some time. But at its core, it really is a concrete, universal purpose in almost any business. And what that is all about wanting to have efficiency, consistency, visibility into your organization. Everybody wants the same things. Now, maybe you have a micro workflow that has a different purpose, but I encourage you to think of what is the purpose of a workflow that you're wanting to implement. And also, what is it that's involved in being able to coordinate that workflow? And today we're going to focus on 3 pillars of what is needed to coordinate such, and what I've put together here for you: tasks, people, and systems. Really the 3 areas that allow you to put together a workflow. And I want you to think about, what is the goal behind a workflow that you're wanting to implement? Is it to have more clarity? Is it to increase turnaround time and delivery time on your orders or your purchases? Is it to have better control over the processes that you have in place? So think about what those goals are as we go through our journey here together. But breaking it down into 4 main areas, regardless if it's a micro workflow, a massive workflow, standardization throughout the organization is a fundamental aspect of workflow. One, it reduces errors and all these different variabilities that can happen. If everyone is using the same format and the same forms, this helps significantly. It also wants to help you keep people accountable in terms of the roles and permissions that they have, which later then helps to enable tracking of bottlenecks or broken processes or failures that would be happening. If we know who is responsible for what, it can really help us in the workflow design. Also, automation. Where does automation come in, right? This is a huge power word also. And what phases or processes still need human intervention and which ones can live without human intervention? This is a big, big topic and really relative when it comes to workflow. And the thing is, it's not just a checklist. I got to do this, this, and this. It's a living, breathing thing, right? Just as your business is, just as your staff are. And so things change and we need to be adaptable to that. So workflows are constantly needing to be examined and maybe redesigned. Maybe you have to automate something else, or you have to give permissions to someone else. But in the world of workflow, document management and document attachment exist. And the reality is that these are 2 very different things, right, Sheldon? You're going to show us a little bit more about this later. But in the world of document attachment, Spire does this very well, commonly seen in many different ERPs and CRMs, where you can attach any kind of document to a record, to a transaction. There's really no management layer behind it. It's not lifecycle managed necessarily. It's kind of one snapshot at a time. It's still very purposeful. But think of it like a sticky note stuck to a folder, if you will. Remember those days when everything was paper and we had folders and sticky notes everywhere? I know one of you just said, Katie, I still have that. So think of document attachment in that respect. And when we talk about document management takes it to another level. Think of it as an electronic filing system, number one, that allows you to organize, easily retrieve, secure documents, controlling who has access to those documents. It involves a more centralized system. And the folks at Infotrac do that really well, as a matter of fact. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But how you take document management and document attachment and build that into a workflow is important, because it can be one of the crucial foundational parts of your workflow. And workflows only thrive when processes and documents are properly managed, right? So attached documents, again, allows you to view for reference, support tasks. We're going to talk about that in Spire a little bit, provide clarity, and also helps to support the workflow, okay? But when they're managed, again, that whole other level, increased audit trail, right? Enforces compliance, making sure your people are respecting the policies that you have in place, tracks versions of a document as well, because things change, right? A quote might change, but maybe we want to see what that original quote was. So think of document attachment as supporting the workflows you might have in place, and think of document management as perhaps enabling the workflows that you have in place. Okay, I'm going to jump into Spire for a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and change my screen that I'm sharing here. That would be this one. Hey, Sheldon, can you confirm with me that you can see Spire?
Yes, for sure we can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So if you've never seen Spire, welcome. This is it. Spire is a modular system. They are fully integrated modules. All of the modules are here on the left-hand side. And this grid that you see in front of you is universal throughout the product. And so you've got grids here that you can customize which columns, which fields you want to see that are important to your workflow throughout the course of the day. We talk about, purposeful organization when it comes to just fluidity during the course of the day. If you had all of these fields in front of you, that might be a little bit cumbersome and difficult to look at. So I encourage customers to always just pick what is absolutely necessary for them in their role, okay? I'm going to go over to the calendar because we're going to focus on, again, those three aspects of workflow: tasks, people, and systems. And when we talk about tasks, the Spire calendar is actually a great way that's quite versatile for you to assign general tasks throughout the organization. If enabled, you're able to see at a high level all of your employees or whomever is using Spire, regardless of what module they predominantly work in. You can narrow your view to view some of the modules, let's say, and maybe not everything. But this is really handy for those that are in charge of operations, that are overseeing a group of people. This calendar can be very handy to assign a task. I can also just simply double click on the date in the calendar, and it will bring up for me a little note calendar, if you will, where I can toggle through and see all of the different tasks that may be assigned to me, whether those are assigned through the calendar directly or from a module specifically, and I'll show that in just a little bit. But if I want to create any kind of new task, also known as a communication in the Spire world, I can either do that by clicking this plus sign from my little pop-up calendar there, or I can click directly into the calendar. Now, because these are coming from the calendar, they're not module specific. And so, again, very good for general use. In every different module, you have types of communication or a note type, and these are respective to that module. And you may want to think about what kinds of communications you might have generally throughout the organization. So here's just a couple of examples for you. They're very easy to create. But I always, if you've been on some of these webinars, will recommend to you that you consider the naming conventions of your codes and the descriptions of what you're creating, okay? So I can usually go ahead and do that. I can assign it to a particular person. I can have it alert so that when that person is logging in, it pops up for them. Or again, have my mini calendar here toggle back and forth. And as new entries or new assignments get made, I can refresh that calendar and it will appear. I can also show what's completed or what has not been completed in the calendar. So it's a nice way to assign general tasks or notices or reminders. Let's say, I know for myself, I live and die by my calendar. And so it's very important in terms of my workflow and not getting bottlenecked as well. I'm going to go over to accounts payables for a second over here. And in the accounts payables module, there's a few things that you can do to help with a workflow process when we talk about tasks, right? Batches at this level, I think, are a great way to create tasks for people that may not have the same permission settings as you do. After all, in accounts payables, the person who's entering the invoice or preparing the batch or preparing the check is not necessarily the person who is signing the check, nor the person who is deciding how much to pay on that invoice. And so batches are a way to help control that in terms of, again, creating those tasks. So over here in the subledger, you can see that I can create a batch or I can view existing batches that may have already been created for me. Now, let's say I'm in charge of accounts payables and I have an assistant, and that assistant went ahead and created a batch that you can see has remained open here. I'll go ahead and open that batch, and she has indicated to me that all three of these invoices are ready to pay. However, I know how much I have to be able to pay, and I want to be able to go in here and just change it from $3,313 on this particular invoice to an even $2,000 is what I'm willing to pay. And so with my permissions set, I can go ahead and edit a batch and make changes to that batch. I can go ahead and save that, and then my assistant can come back in and post the batch as she has permissions to do so, or I can do that myself. Another thing that you can do when we talk about documents in this perspective is I can go ahead and print that batch and have a preview of it, where I can then go ahead and attach that to a communication so that my supervisor can review the copy of the batch that's been printed in that listing report. So either by assigning a task and attaching the PDF itself, or just by assigning the task for that particular batch in the calendar, which again, I would keep that calendar open here, and I would ask my supervisor to basically remind them to approve AP batch for August 7th. If that's the case, Hodor is my boss. It's actually my dog, but we'll just say he's my boss for this. And I want it to alert him, and I want him to do that today. And I'll save that, and it will go ahead and appear on Hodor's calendar. So if I go over here, you'll see that. And Hodor can focus on his tasks as well. So you can go ahead and open that and carry on. So batches are a great way to do that. Again, you can attach a PDF to a communication that you've assigned to the AP person, whether it's approvals or it's tasks to go ahead and create the AP batch or enter invoices one at a time. So those are some of the ways that tasks can work. I'm going to take a quick look over here at sales as well. And in the world of sales and in the world of purchases and in the world of manufacturing, we have phases in Spire. And there is a certain level of automation with phases in Spire that help the flow of orders, whether it is approval phases within an order or it's quotes and follow-ups, whatever the case may be. If there are certain checks in place that need to happen to make sure customer requirements have been made, you can create all of these phases in sales orders. And again, different workflows for different departments. Purchasing, manufacturing would be different. But I don't even have to go into my friends over here at Philly Connection. I've highlighted that record for you. I can push them through the next phase that I've already set up by clicking next phase. Go ahead and do that, and it will prompt an order confirmation to be written because I've set that up. Let me go ahead and show you how you do that in Spire. And again, with the understanding that codes matter, and with the understanding that you are creating workflow processes to meet the goals that you've outlined. Over here in a sales order, I'm going to open up the phases that were on the right-hand side of my window. And these are all the phases that I've created. Now, this may vary from company to company and industry to industry and department to department, but I can also have it so that a document automatically gets generated from Spire in accordance to that phase. And here are where those get built. So if you haven't done this yet, folks, I highly recommend that you do. It's a very powerful tool in terms of phases and fluidity and flowing. And again, there's a bit of automation built right in there for you. Now, the last module I want to take a look at before I jump onto something else is accounts receivables. We all love money coming in. It's the direction in which we want to see it flowing. So let's spend a little bit of time in accounts receivables. We talked about users having certain permissions and accountability, which can help avoid bottlenecks as well, and also help you drill down and have more visibility into where something may be stuck, or what task is next, or what process is next. So in accounts receivables, for example, I am a collector. I actually cut my teeth. One of my first jobs was collecting on past due accounts. And there's a great way to be able to filter down and get more information to be more fluid in your practice. And user-defined fields is probably one of the best ways to do that in Spire. So when it comes to accounts receivables, I'll pick on my friends here at A1 Park. They owe us quite a bit of money, as you can see. But in the user-defined field section, I've created very simply just a collections or an AR forecasting way that I can then report to my supervisors what I'm expecting to come in for payments that week, that month, whatever the case may be. And because I'm responsible for that, filters then can be created for my bosses to easily query about where things are in terms of cash flow. So user-defined fields exist in every module, okay? And you can edit and create those simply by accessing your user-defined field within that module. You would create a general page, and that will appear as one of these tabs here. I've called it collections. And from there, you can do different fields that you might want to populate. So I said the payment is expected on this date, what payment type is available. This is a drop-down text that we've created, promised amount to pay, because sometimes customers don't pay the full balance. That's just the reality. Another field that I may want to do is which invoice is this being applied to? Now, when we talk about processes and policies within your organization, some companies will just apply payment to the entire account. Some companies will insist on applying payment to the oldest invoice. And so that really is a decision you have to make and can affect your processes, your workflow, and how your cash flow operates as well. So in that case, if that's, I want to make sure that it's getting applied to a particular invoice, then I'll go ahead and create that field. And now it's there, and I want it to be applied to invoice 1234. You could add a check number if that's what you're wanting to add, whatever the case may be. But these user-defined fields are very, very powerful and are also queryable, right? Through filters. And filters are also something that exists throughout Spire entirely, universally throughout the program. And you're able to filter on particular queries. This is that visibility that we talked about, okay? And in accounts receivables, maybe you want to do your general over 90 days due, over 120 days due, but maybe you want to be able to provide a report to your supervisor that's going to show you if the expected payment date is this month, I want to know who's promising to pay me this month, then I can easily generate a quick filtered report for whoever wants to see that. And that really is one of the biggest things when it comes to filters in Spire, is the ability to answer that one quick question. Every time somebody's knocked at the door and just has that one quick question, what happened to this? How much is owed? Whatever the case may be, filters are a great way to do that. So these are some of the foundational aspects in Spire that you can use to help, again, create tasks, make sure that the people are assigned to those tasks. And we'll talk about systems with Sheldon in a second, because I think integration through automation and things like that is very important. But the last thing I want to show you are user permissions. And this is the people part of what we were talking about. You want to make sure that people do not have permissions to do certain things or do in Spire based on what your processes and policies are. One of the biggest ones in terms of the calendar is, do I want this person to actually see everybody's calendar, right? At a service level, let's say a service tech, he doesn't necessarily need to see what all the other techs are doing, for example, right? But as a supervisor, I may want to be able to have insight to what everyone's workday kind of looks like. Another one would be in accounts payables, and we talked about batches in accounts payables. You may or may not want somebody to have the ability to delete a batch or to add a new batch, but maybe just to make a small edit or vice versa. So pay attention to those things. Communications also will exist in every module. Can they just view it? Can they edit that? The same thing would apply in accounts receivables and in sales orders. In sales orders, you have a lot of power in terms of user permissions. So whether it is a phase that you want to be able to change, is that person allowed to change the phase? Are they allowed to incrementally push those phases from one to the next? These are different tasks that you would assign and permissions that you would consider for these people. And so make sure that that's all working nice and smooth for you. All right, Sheldon, I am done my part for now. I'm ready to hand things over to you. Sheldon,
Oh,
I'm going to go ahead and just change the presenter over to you. You should see an invitation that allows you to share your screen.
okay, here we go. There we go. Is it working?
Great. Yeah, I can see it.
That's a good thing. Um, Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. And Katie, that was a great introduction and a great overview of Spire and some of the great capabilities that Spire has. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of give you an overview of Infotrac as it's fully integrated into Spire on many levels, and some of the things that we do around the workflow document management side of things. Ideally, what happens with our software is it's very much a setup and configuration situation, much like you get with Spire. We can get extremely detailed in how we do some of that setup and configuration, and we have various components in our system that let us do some really great, amazing things. So what I'll start with is first on the customer side. So with the synchronization and the integration of Infotrac to Spire, most of the data that lives in Spire is also available to Infotrac. So you can pull up a customer, and under our accounting menu, we have the ability to see, for example, all the AR sales history. So we can go in and we can pull up any invoice out of Spire directly from Infotrac. And then we have the ability to, using our integration, to create a statement and have all of the open invoices as attached with that statement. And then we have an engine in our system that will allow you to set those collection statements and invoices out on a timely basis. If you want to say everybody over, with receivables over 30 days that are greater than X number of dollars, excuse me, every, on the 45th day, I want to send them an email with that information attached, with those documents attached. So we'll automate all of the communication to the customers for accounts receivable collection. We do a lot of things around that, and depending on your specific requirements and workflow, we have the ability to create that kind of automation and that
So
kind of.
Sheldon, show me how you would do that. So if I'm understanding you correctly, like in Spire, I can generate a statement of account for a customer, no problem. And then I can say, I want to print out of all the invoices that are on that statement. But then I do have to manually attach them into an email communication. And there's nothing in Spire that says on the 15th of every month, make sure that everyone who is past 30, 60, 90 days gets a copy of their statement with all relative invoices. That's still a manual process in Spire. So am I hearing you correctly that Infotrac, one, not only will generate the statement, but all the corresponding invoices and put them into a communication, but that you can then further automate it so that this automatically happens at
Yeah.
whatever increment in the month the customer wants, right?
Yeah, so the way we do
Amazing.
that, yep. The way we do that is we have an engine that is lives behind Infotrac that
Yeah.
we very simply configure, and it would go in and it would take this. Here is the statement, and here's
Oh
all the
yeah.
invoices, and
Yeah.
it will take these and it will attach them to an email and automatically send that email. And then what it will
Right.
do, and I'll just show you on this, I've got a couple of different Infotracs going to show some different things. What it will do is it will send it into our Infotrac. We have we have our main screen of Infotrac, and then we have these tabs down the side that give us
Yeah.
different views of the customer. So when you go to the attachment, then you would have the email that was automatically sent out to the customer with all of the attachments from
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was that was going on. So
Right.
these are all connected into Infotrac this way, and then we also have a calendar system, and we have an activity system that allows us to do the same sort of thing as you do in Spire with the calendar. But the concept of our system is that we will automatically send out all of the statements
Communications that you're wanting to. Yeah.
with the
So when we talk about workflow automation, an accounts receivables workflow very much would be this, where we've got those user defined fields, let's say, that I created so that you can see what expected payments and is it going to be a credit card, is it going to be a check, is it going to be a e-transfer, whatever. And based on whatever requirements and parameters I have in my Spire, your Infotrac will respect that in that automated workflow
yeah.
receivables statement concept that we're talking about. That's amazing. What about
And
the
then
payable side, Sheldon? The payable
oh,
side of
payable
document
side,
management.
payable side is the best. Uh,
Although
yeah,
we don't like paying the bills, we have
we
to,
don't
right?
like
So
but
yeah.
what we do with payables, um, this was born out of a few of our customers' requirements, and that it has evolved over time. What we do is when you have a vendor, and you'll see that in Infotrac, there's an account type. You're either a vendor, a customer, or neither. So the concept of our software is you're working with all of the aspects of your business, which might not be customers yet. They might be prospects or suspects or people that you're working with in different business service capacities. So Infotrac allows you to have people you're working with that are not yet a customer. And then, of course, when they become a customer and you change this to customer or vendor, and then you give it an account number, it automatically creates it in Spire and allows you to then be able to go and process transactions, etc. So what happens is, as a vendor, all of the accounts payable ledger for this vendor in Spire is now available in Infotrac. And every invoice that has ever been recorded against this supplier is here. And what we do is we allow you to attach the physical invoice that you got. And this is born out of the disparity of how invoices flow today, because in the old days, we used to get them by mail, and we used to put them in file cabinets, or we used to scan them and they live on a hard drive. Now we get them in email and they live in someone's email. And, when from an accounting procedure perspective, do we have all these source documents? What happens when our accountants or government authorities or somebody else is interested in finding out, show me this
Yeah.
document, and you're like, it's not in the folder because it's stuck in someone's email, or it's stuck on a website because
Or
you have.
somebody misfiled it even. Do you know, like I was talking to sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. I got to tell this story, Sheldon. I was talking to a financial controller just a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about accounts payables and a little bit of automation in that. And as I would, I asked her to explain what her current processes were. Even if the invoice was emailed to them, they still print it. They
Wow.
still print the check. They still attach the check remittance portion to the copy of the invoice, and then she marches over to her filing cabinet
Oh,
and files it. right?
Oh
And
no.
she has 15 years of files here going on.
Oh,
And it's just amazing that this still exists. So in this solution, not only can we attach the source invoice to the payables transaction, but that virtual library is housing this document. And we all know how much fun it is when the auditor or worse, our friends at the CRA come knocking at your door and they're like, I want to see this invoice, this invoice, this invoice, this invoice. Are you going to start printing that and scanning it, or can you pick them, zip them up, and send them off?
so exactly. And the situation is, the beauty of this is that you're not restricted to what you're attaching. So for example, I might have an invoice and I want to be able to have a copy of the PO, and I want the technical drawings that went along with that part that I bought from that vendor, et cetera, et cetera. It's not limited that way. So you have the ability to attach these documents, and your document attachments are automatically managed within Infotrac. And the beauty of that is, when you go into Spire and you go to that vendor and you go to your accounts payable communications, they're all attached in there too. So we
Oh,
replicate the exact same thing on the Spire side, because what we learned was there could be people in your company that live in Spire and they don't live in Infotrac, but they
yeah,
need access to this. So we're always very cognizant about trying to make sure that the users in our customers have the ability to get what they need from either Infotrac, Spire, both, however it sort of works. And the
yeah.
beauty of this, and I just did this, I just had the requirement of this last week from our auditors, where they're
Oh,
working on year-end stuff, and they said, we need to see, these invoices for these particular things. And I came in and I was like, okay, so he wants that one, and he wants those three, and he wants this one and this one. That should do it. And you hit compile documents, and it'll automatically create a zip file with all of the documents, and it will allow you to email it out to you prepared for you to email out through Outlook or whatever you're using to your auditor. So the beauty of this, and the other thing, I had this other experience, I'm sure we've all had this, where we've been questioned for something from CRA, where they go, we want to see, the HST thing, we want to see these invoices. When you can go and say, oh, hold on 1 second, click, 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 and you email it to them,
yeah.
the first thing they think of is, okay, these people have it
Are
together.
organized. Yeah,
Are organized.
absolutely.
And
Hmm.
it takes the emphasis off of what they're looking at and what they're doing with an incredibly high level of trust.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
this is one of the great things that we do. And the other thing we do is, you'll notice that there's a green check mark which shows that there's a document attached, but sometimes you have a transaction that doesn't require. So you have this X, and when you click here, you could say there's no source document applicable, or the source paper has been filed, and you can say it's in filing cabinet number 3, drawer number 2. So
Yeah.
it's really a good system for managing documents on the accounts payable side, and gives you a really good safe library for
Yeah.
all your documentation.
I like
We
that that you can still, say there's no document, but it has been filed and here's where it's filed. It's kind of like warehouse location for documents, right? So
Yeah.
it's very important. And you can imagine, the time saved in all of this, the money saved. When we do our open houses last year, I do a whole calculation of how much people are spending on paper, ink, stamps, envelopes. I think I'll
Mhm.
do one this year about filing cabinets and the time it
Yeah.
takes to file things and what it costs to look up things.
Oh, never mind.
Document man it.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, never mind that. When you run out of space and you start storing all your older documents off-site, so now you've got
Yeah.
off-site storage costs, and if I need it, I have to retrieve box number 423 that hopefully has what I'm looking for. So
Yeah.
it's a real quagmire. So
Yeah, and there's all kinds of compliance and regulations around documents and how long you should be keeping them, how secure are where they're living. We have many clients in the Spire world that are in the medical equipment industry where there is a lot of private information.
yeah,
And so conversations with your Spire partner or with the folks at Infotrac can help address those questions. Where is this library living? How secure is it? Who has access to it, right?
yeah,
These are all part of the things that we need to consider. How long does the government want you to keep those documents? If you're holding on to invoices you paid 15 years ago, that's a
yeah,
bit extreme in my opinion, but okay, hey, if you didn't have to keep them in a filing cabinet anymore, that might be better. So,
yeah.
so Sheldon, we talked about receivables, we talked about payables, we saw how all of those attachments get then pushed into Spire. Um, can you talk a little bit about the environment where all the documents live for me?
Sure. So what happens in Infotrac is that each customer, and I'll use this one as I'll use this one as a really good example. Each customer has an attachment section, and the attachment section allows you to attach any kind of documentation that you have, including emails from Outlook. So we have an integration to Outlook that allows you to send email from Outlook and attach it into Infotrac, or when you receive an email, you can attach it into Infotrac, and then you pull it up and here's the actual Outlook email. And if it has an attachment, then the attachment is here. So you've got this capability to use email as part of your document management regime, whether you're saving those documents inside this part of our system or throughout our software. There are so many ways and places that we can attach documents for workflow. So
Okay.
this is an overall sort of
Of every
library.
module, of every communication. This
Right.
is the library, right? Okay.
Library.
I understand. That's
And
that's
then
perfect.
And then under our history tab, we have all of the activities. We use this thing in our system called next actions. Whoops, sorry, clicking the wrong things. We use something called next actions, and this allows us to record an activity, whether it's on a calendar, whether it goes into the history for the customer to record an activity of what I did. And this is one of the ways we attach files. So all of those are here. And when you open those, if there is an attachment to it, so let's just see, I don't know if any of these have any attachments, but if there is, it would be here and you could open
Show
it
it.
and there you go. So you have a really good sort of base library for doing things. But the other thing that we do very heavily in Infotrac is we have a quotation order system. And in our quotation order system, which is fully integrated into Spire, so all of the inventory items and all of the rules around inventory and whatever it is that your inventory and your order process world is, you can do quotations or orders in our interface. And when that quotation it starts as a quote, when it becomes an order, then it will automatically go into Spire as if you had created it in Spire. But
Mm-hmm.
in this environment, we can set up whatever you need for we have control of these columns to be able to add any elements of data, and we attach documents to this. So you can have a full sort of document management process going with your quotes that become orders that are in Spire and then are invoiced out of there and out of Spire. And then, of course, when they're invoiced, we have the access to them right here so that we can go in and we can pull up the invoice that went out with that. And we have access then in this system by going to our sales history
Mm-hmm.
in Infotrac that we can pull up any of those orders and we can have any of that all of those document attachments are.
Chronologically listed. Yeah.
So,
Interesting. And that
so
that that could be important, Sheldon. If you're looking at the entire history of an account from the time they were a suspect to a prospect, the record doesn't actually become a customer until an actual transaction has taken place, right? But seeing the life of that, as opposed to just an attachment, but seeing the entire document management of that record's life within a system is really the difference between document management and document attachment. Sheldon, I'm just going to sorry, I'll let you finish before I grab that back from you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that one of the things that we do that is key with that is, we will have documents, for example, maybe there's technical drawings or there's whatever the documentation is, but what we don't want is our vision is that Spire is for the accounting side of the world, and when we have a sale, so we really promote doing all the pre-sales activity in Infotrac and let Infotrac handle that. And when it becomes a customer, it goes into Spire. So you don't have Spire full of all of these non-customer, their setup
records.
Yeah. And the other thing,
and if that's part of someone's process, absolutely, and that can definitely work for them. And again, when we talk about workflow and organization, there's the sales process, right? Pre-sales. What are your nurturing of prospects like? Whether you're in medical or food distribution, we all have clients that we sell to, and so. What capabilities in terms of CRM functionality, we talked about that with attachments and workflows, are you looking for that need to be enhanced outside of the Spire world? And it's lovely that Infotrac has so much flexibility. I love that we focused on document management here today. I think there's a huge difference in terms of document management versus document attachment. In the Spire world, you can see the attachments for each record. You can see the attachments for the transactions, but those live siloed within each of their respective modules. Whereas what Sheldon was showing us earlier today is that you can see all of the documents associated to the story of that record all in one place. And that might be something that's important to you for your workflow and your processes that you have in place. Sheldon, you talked about something that I just want to go back in and touch on in Spire, and I think that your Infotrac is highly dependent on this as well, and that is customer contacts. We talk about customer contacts and how important they are, but let's take it a step back and just acknowledge contacts in general. In Spire, under company settings in the company, you've got contact types, and this can be integral to a workflow and an automation. We talked about AR before and automating statements and invoices and telling Infotrac to pull it all once a month and send it. Well, we have to make sure that Infotrac knows who to send it to. The worst thing that could happen is you send someone statements and all their invoices to everybody or the wrong person. We wouldn't want that to happen. And when we properly code or name types of contacts that exist in our source of truth, which is Spire, and then able to pull that information into something like Infotrac, we have to think about the kind of contacts. These are types. Now you can have unlimited contacts per vendor, per customer, and how you categorize them is important. So in Sheldon's setup of automating statements, Sheldon, I would imagine that you would say, on this day of the month, send these that fall into this parameter over 60 days with a bit on this statement, but make sure it goes to the accounting contact at each record, right?
Or whichever contact, and Infotrac fully synchronizes to the new contact regime of Spire, where before we had that 3 contact sort of limit, and now we have a proper sort of contact engine in Spire. So we have integrated that fully into Infotrac. And Katie, I want to add one last thing, and that is that our we have this document automation engine. We call it IRAS. I forget what it stands for, but it does stand for something really good. But what happens is we can create a document from Spire or Infotrac data. So for example, get me a list of all the orders out of Spire whose due date is, within 3 days and it looks like we're not going to be able to do those orders, or get me a list of all of the accounts receivables over 30 days that are greater than X number of dollars, or anything you can really imagine that you want in data. We'll compile that report automatically, and usually we do it at 3 a.m. and we'll email it out to whatever stakeholders are assigned to that document. So we have this ability, and we say we want it every Friday morning. We started off by calling it the Starbucks report, because it's the report that you get on your phone in email when you're standing in line at Starbucks. You're able to scroll to open it up and say, oh wow, look at, we got 4 orders that we're going to be late on. We better get in touch with these customers, make sure that they know. Or these, we got to get on these 3 customers that are really delinquent in paying us. So we have this ability to create reports and automatically distribute them in the middle of the night to the stakeholders that that information.
And that's really great. Again, that's another workflow. We talk about, information at our fingertips, especially some of those higher executives within an organization don't want to have to go digging for details, right? And so having that kind of, report on your desk or first thing in your inbox every morning about the state of the organization, or the cash flow projection, or the sales projection, or how things are going in the purchasing department. There's many different ways to do that, but it is very nice to know that Infotrac kind of works as a console to be able to automate some of these things.
Yeah.
I was just showing, as you were talking, how the importance of contacts does come into play again. And you saw me add Katie Griffin as a sales contact to my friends at A1 Park, and here she is right there, that troublemaker. Then I went to go ahead and just email a copy of the invoice for the $5.65 to my friends at A1 Park. But the fundamental part here is the contact type, the record that's in there. Spire is always going to be your source of truth. So you want to make sure that that's in there and that it's set up properly. Now, whether your workflows are predefining templates, right? We can do that here as well. I can select a template that I have created ahead of time. And so that kind of automates some of the process of me having to communicate with my customers. Maybe that's sufficient for your organization and the workflows that you've designed with the goals in mind. But perhaps you're needing more than that. And that's where our friends at Infotrac come in. And, beyond document management, there's a lot that is available for you. But in terms of workflow, folks, think about how much of it needs to be automated, who's doing what, and how you're managing your documents, those that are being generated out of Spire and those that are coming into Spire. These are all very important things. I'm going to go back to my slide deck here. And we're getting ready to wrap up our session here, but just a few things I want you to think about: those internal processes, the policies that you have in place. We talked about phases. Phases exist both in Spire. You can predefine statements or templates or invoices or order confirmations or any of the reports that you want to automatically pop up in your phases. Infotrac takes it one step further, where you don't have to have human action or task or intervention. They can automate that for you in your phases. Codes, Sheldon and his programmers will tell you that the naming convention and the consistency of codes is detrimental to how well your integration will work, or any workflow process that you have. I talked about contacts with you just earlier. And think about meaningful design. What is, again, the purpose of your workflow? And through phases, contacts, codes, tasks, calendars, integrations, Infotrac, colors, this and that, you have so many tools at your disposal in order to be able to do that. Those user permissions that we talked about, is the person in accounts payables who is entering the invoice the same person to create the batch, or to authorize a payment amount, or to sign the check? Often it's not all the same person. And so make sure that those reviews and authorizations and approvals are part of your workflow, and that the data that is going in there is accurate. Okay. And finally, in terms of workflows, I want you to think about departmental considerations. What are some KPIs that you're looking for in each department? That will help you define what the goal is in your workflow as well. right? You want to design a workflow to meet a point, to perhaps report on certain performance indicators for each department, whether that's accounting, purchasing, sales, manufacturing. Think about phases by department before you deploy it throughout the entire organization. Some phases are industry specific, department specific, role specific. Think about the tasks and communications and how they're relative to the module that they exist, and how in the calendar they can apply globally, and how in Infotrac you can take it that step further and trigger automations for the next step, like Sheldon was talking about. Context and types, as we said, accountability and ownership. I want to know who did what, who printed what, when did they file it, when did they attach it. All of that stuff is important, not just for your processes, but if your auditors and the CRA come knocking at your door, you're going to want to know who did what and when, okay? And when to automate, like we talked about. Folks, this was episode 6 of 10. We have 2 more before we take a little break this fall. If you can imagine, we've done webinars every month this year, sometimes more than one a month. This month has actually been really busy, Sheldon. But we have 2 more webinars coming up before we take a break. Next week, I've got my friend Shannon Lynch, the Power BI coach, that's joining us. And the week after, we'll be talking to Go Integrations about automations. The Spire open houses are coming up. The first one is 31 days away in Winnipeg. Sheldon will be joining us. Infotrac will be joining us in every city. We're so happy to have you. Yeah, Sheldon, I hope you booked your flight.
Already? Wow.
I'll get on you. Don't worry. I know that you're going to be there. We're very excited to see our clients. And again, if you're new to Spire or you're considering Spire, this is a wonderful event for you to be at. There is an entire introduction to the Spire ecosystem. We offer you valuable insight to how to use Spire. We do dive into some training as well. And of course, our friends at Infotrac and a few other integration partners will be there for you to talk to them also. You can find this information on our website. It's a full day. I'll have the agenda published either by tomorrow or Monday. Very soon, you'll see it's a full day that we've got there for you. Some of our friends in the audience were there last year. I do recognize some names. I do hope that you're going to join us again this year. So keep that in mind. If you want more information, talk to your Spire partner. And I know in my role that the #1 source of new business comes from existing customers. And I hope that's the same for you in your business. It really is the best referral that anybody can get. And so we want to reward you for that. If you are currently using Spire and maybe you saw a vendor PO or a vendor invoice, a customer PO and a vendor invoice, and you were like, oh, that's ugly, they could really use something better, maybe they're a good candidate for Spire. Or if there was a business who you talked to about Spire and they approach us when they name you, we will recognize both of you. When you're purchasing Spire, we'll give you a discount. And if you're already a Spire customer, we'll give you a discount on your annual software assurance. There's more information online for that. And we appreciate your business and spreading the Spire news as well. Thank you so much for your time here today with us, folks. I sincerely appreciate you spending this time with us. Sheldon, thank you for demonstrating how document management is such a huge part of workflow and so different than attachment. I do love what I see. I'm looking forward to you sharing this and more with the folks throughout the fall and seeing you in person again in 31 days, right? So
Already. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Katie.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Sheldon. Everyone, be well. Take care. Again, I'm Katie Griffin. You can email me, kgriffin@spiresystems.com, or please get in touch with your Spire partner if you have any questions. Be well, everyone. Enjoy your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.